All right, thank you everyone for coming. We're going to use the mic, not so much that we need it for speakers, but so we can record this and get more people interested and get their feedback. So I'm RJ Suko, Director of Public Works for Corte, Madera. Introduce the rest of our team here today. We've got Ashley Howe, Director of Parks and Recreation. We've got Jay Corwath, who's a Project Manager with Public Works. So we're here today to talk about the Town Park Restroom project. There's been a lot of input over the years and a need for more facilities. Obviously right now we've been leaning heavily on the portable units, which I think all of us would like something higher quality and more functional. So that's what we're here to talk about. This is the first workshop of several public engagement events. Through the course of this development, we will be going to Parks and Rec Commission, Planning Commission, as well as Council. But we hope to do that in an efficient and timely manner so we can get these facilities up and running as soon as possible. And with that, I'm going to kick it to Ashley Howe to give a little background on some of the history of what led us here, a little bit on the master planning process, and any other pieces of new. So here you go, Ashley.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Mm-hmm. All right, so first off, just a little bit of background on how we're getting to this point of the project. As most of you know and hopefully have participated in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that survey community needs assessment went out to all of our residents in 2021 in the spring. And we digested that feedback and it brought us to some community workshops as well as public engagement meetings, and then we had some follow-up survey kind of poll results. And some of those conversations at each of those points, starting with the survey, is that a top priority was addressing the solutions for restrooms in Town Park. So currently we have one permanent facility, and that is located on the western side of the park, and that's serving directly the tennis courts and the skate park. But we don't have anything besides the portable units in the rest of the park. So in some of the conversations that we've had during those meetings, especially during the January 2022 Zoom meetings, we really kind of discussed the different locations. And if we followed a map of where the current temporary units were and considered the option of putting permanent restroom facilities in those locations, we plotted a map for that you'll see later. And part of those conversations also at the end of 2021 was that Town Council had a strategic planning meeting to help staff generally direct the work plan for the following year. And Council decided that it was a Category 1 and Category 2 project to find a solution for Town Park restrooms. So we brought it here to you today to discuss a little bit more about the details of the location, what kind of amenities you'd like to see, and some of the details of a restroom project. So thank you all for coming, and hopefully you'll appreciate being a part of this engagement process. And for anybody that's watching the meeting after the fact, you can send comments to public comment at TCM Mail. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ashley. Hi, everybody. So first I'll start with, this is a workshop, so anything you hear, see, feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions or comments right off the bat. Feels a little formal with the cameras and the screens and all. But we really want to reach out to the community and really are asking for input. So the more you have to say, the better. When we get over to the exercises, you'll have an opportunity to put sticky tabs on any of the options and you know, differences there with any firm opinion you may have or may not have. And we'll also you know, touch on each exercise and make this more of a get up and wander around kind of thing rather than sit down and zone out. So, you know, again, talking about a restroom here, and initially we're trying to alleviate some of the, no pun intended, some of the restroom inadequacies out in the park. So for this, we'll talk about amenities, you know, what you guys would like to see within the bathroom. I think kind of where we're at right now, we'll provide a list of sort of the standard amenities that we're going to consider as a design team, and you'll have an opportunity to kind of, you know, say yes, you agree, no, you don't agree, but right now we're just kind of going through a standard list. Aesthetics, we have quite a few design options. we have an exercise that will be coming up where you kind of get to look at a couple of different options, what the design may or may not finally be. You guys, how you're compelled, will be able to mark what you kind of like. Type of restroom, we'll get into that. I think I'll save that for the slides coming up, but we'll go into single occupant, multiple occupant, we'll get there. And then security, anti-graffiti, you know, do we want to touch on cameras, that sort of thing. We'll touch on that within this presentation as well. And then finally location, again, going through the exercise of where exactly we want this bathroom located. So with that, I guess we'll jump into the standard amenities. There's a list of amenities behind me, if everyone would like to kind of take a look. And it's fairly straightforward. I think one of the big things that we're seeing a lot of, and I think there's a lot of positive feedback, exterior drinking fountains, which has been around for a long time, but also water filling stations. I think that's a newer thing that we'd like to incorporate. Hand dryers, a lot of times we see them being vandalized, so there's some options where maybe we'll make something a little bit more robust. We'll see, keep it under consideration. Thing we're having a lot of feedback on is changing space. So anything we build, we'd like to have some room for you know, people running to soccer practice, be able to jump in and change where they need to. Clothing hooks, lockable hose bibs, you know, you name it. There's a whole list of things that we're considering. And again, if you have anything in particular that you maybe don't see on the list, or a good idea you have in the back of your mind.
What is a lockable hose bib?
So if you think of where a hose is connected and the actual, you know, you can turn the water on, a lockable hose bib would just be simply something that locks that feature off. So either it be a padlock on the hose bib itself or a cover that's locked so that no one has access to the water. It's just something we're considering as an example. The last thing on the list is the basic aesthetics of the restroom. And I think we're all more or less in agreement that we'd like something that matches the park. But then it kind of leads to a lot of interpretation, and everyone might have a different, like art, everyone has a different opinion on what actually fits. So with that, I think we'll start our first exercise. We've got a printout for this board, and we'd ask if all of you guys would like to come up, grab a sticker. For the first one, green or yellow. And will green be your first choice that you're most compelled to, and yellow second choice. So if you want to give it a go. And then again, if you have any comments, feel free to write on a sticky note.
Yeah. And this is far left
So one thing I wanted to note, as Jake said, that this is really just kind of the initial aesthetic appearance. What kind of look are you kind of driven to or attracted to at first? There's a number of, like a bazillion different combinations of flexibility that we have when we go to a company to consider different amenities and portions. There's roof types, there's roof shapes, there's, you know, exterior water fountains, there's interior water fountains, there's, you know, different hand washing stations, there's different ways you can enter into the buildings. All kinds of different options that can be customized. So later you'll kind of see a little bit more of the customizable options as far as, you know, traditional occupancy versus, you know, hybrid ones. So I'll turn it over to Jake.
Thanks, Ashley. And I think, again, that exercise at this juncture, great for everyone to see that there are lots of options and a lot of different, you know, scenarios that could ultimately be our final design. As we move along, kind of get into, double check here, type of restroom. This is kind of the hot topic these days. And we've more or less got 3 different options for everyone to take a look at. You know, the old-time men's and women's. We've got single occupant type restrooms where the entire bathroom structure has single rooms. And some of you may have seen that. And then we've got a bit of a hybrid with both options there. So this one, I don't really have a whole lot of other talking points to, but we do have an exercise of, again, green your favorite layout, yellow your second favorite layout. We've got another printout if you.
I'll show them on the screen one more time. This is similar to what we have on the west end of the park. Individual units. And then combination of both.
And also important to note, all the different options will have ADA compliance, so there will be plenty of room for changing and that kind of thing as well.
Also to consider before we go to any questions or comments, is if you want to write on the side the number of ideal users you want to have in there at a time, that helps us determine what kind of capacity we're looking at. Because you can see there's a variety of different options where you have, you know, a capacity of 6 people that could use this at the same time, or 7 people. So it helps if you want to let us know too what your preference would be for that location, that, you know, serving this kind of area of the park. Susie.
So can any of the layouts go into any of the outside buildings?
Yes, they can all be customized with different trusses, with different roof shapes, materials, exterior materials, whether it's you know, wood or different painted concretes or stones or anything like that.
So on that chart over there, if you like the layout of the bottom, but you like the building on the top left, that could happen.
You can make a comment. Yeah. So really, we're looking for the multiple occupants, you know, strategy versus the single or a hybrid.
Yeah,
and then
so
you can write comments on it.
I think what you're saying is, yeah, as you put your stickers, focus more on the layout and less on the pictures that are associated with them.
Pictures are perfect.
Yeah.
Jonna,
Do you envision these being open only part of the time?
another conversation when we get into security. We'd love your feedback on that point.
Who wants to go?
You ready?
Yep.
Up and down.
Okay, exercise number 2, just about to wrap up here.
And as you're thinking more, you can always go back at the end and add different comments if you'd like to.
So far we've gone through exterior appearances of the bathrooms, and now we've touched on a little bit more on the layout, what the internal guts of the bathroom would look like. Our next topic that we're going to move into, let's see, we'll get into security considerations. This is similar to the amenities. Again, if you have a strong preference or something we may not have on the list, feel free to write it in and stick it on one of the boards we have up. But, you know, I think the auto locks came up earlier. Right now, we'll have that capability. Whether or not we actually keep them locked is kind of up for discussion.
So a little background, some of you may have seen it from our existing bathroom. You might go in there and it's vandalized, and there was actually a period of time where that was happening almost on a weekly basis. And so, you know, there's that side of us that it'd be terrible to have this big investment that is damaged, you know, within, you know, right away. And then separately, it's downtime if stalls are vandalized and they're not open for use. So it's not necessarily on the forefront of everyone's mind, but it's definitely something we want to think about. So we put the best design forward so we minimize damage and keep them open for longer and all those good things. And so one of the, you know, what we're seeing some of our other agencies doing are these auto locks that are on a timer that at whatever time, 8:30 at night, they auto lock and they shut off. And so curious what your thoughts are on there. On a more, I guess, where things are still happening beyond that, we've actually seen other agencies also install cameras not facing the bathrooms, but facing kind of the entry, so to speak, so that you could potentially identify someone who is in it. So we want to hear your thoughts. If that's a hard no, if that's a non-starter, we want to know if everyone thinks it's great and it's going to help vandalism, limit vandalism. We want to know that too. So.
All right. That one we didn't really have an exercise for, but if you have comments, feel free to submit to the email address we'll provide at the end, or again, write a comment on a sticky tab and get it on one of the boards, and we'll take note.
We can take a couple pictures now if you want to.
Yeah, if anyone wants to go ahead.
So for the camera idea, why not similar to like a airport or some bathroom like that, where basically these stalls are removed from the hand washing station and the exit, and so that you can have the camera spaced in that, because most of the vandalism is happening by the hand washing station or something like that. You have the camera spacing something that's not privacy protected. Is that an option?
So in case anybody in here, one suggestion is to consider having security cameras that are facing the hand washing station within inside the restroom. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically your egress points, your cameras are facing egress points, and that's shared wall has the hand washing station on it. Behind that, where the cameras are not facing, where no one sees anything, are the stalls.
Okay.
Good idea.
Yeah, I think cameras are an unfortunate necessity nowadays, and I think I heard that the town might be looking at that in the future for a lot of the buildings, and I'm afraid it's a necessity. So, and of course, privacy would preclude certain locations, but.
So here, maintain the importance of maintaining privacy, but also putting an element of deterrent of having a camera is with ideal locations.
Right.
Jonna?
For decades, when bathrooms have been discussed and the vandalism on the other bathroom occurred, people were very uptight about the idea of having cameras, but in the recent decade, everybody's so used to there being Ring cameras or something else everywhere, you are more accustomed and more, I won't say comfortable, but accepting of the probability that you're being photographed wherever you are. So I think that it is a necessity to have cameras.
Thank you for that. Alden?
I would put a plug in for the auto locks. I don't think that there's a whole lot of reason to have the after dark when nobody's here anyway. So that feels like a safety thing. Hopefully we don't lock them again by accident. That would be nice.
I think you do exit only, yeah.
But I would be curious from these designers' perspective, is there a design that is less prone to vandalism? Like, once you don't have stalls, you can't break the doors. So like, are there things we can consider as we think about the designs that there are fewer things to break and fewer things that could cause an issue?
And the question is there particular designs that are more resilient to any kind of vandalization? And that's something that we would definitely ask any of the companies that we're researching out to. We just preliminarily looked at 3 different companies. One had a great options that we could share today. But yes, after gaining feedback, we would give that feedback to whatever company that we're looking to select and have them provide their recommendation on that also. I think it's also hard to know what type of facility and design based on what locations they've been installed in. So, but we'll rely on the experts to let us know if there's a way to determine that. Any other bathroom questions? Lindsay?
I have a ring. So I do think cameras can be helpful, but honestly, like, no one's afraid of cameras anymore because they are everywhere. So if someone's going to vandalize, they're just going to turn their face and do it anyways. I don't think the camera's really going to help support catching someone who's vandalized. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I would rather use money and resources elsewhere to support
Okay, thank you. Any other feedback that you'd like to share regarding that topic? Okay. Again, if you think of anything later, you're welcome to either add it here or send it to public comment.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thanks for your feedback. And it seems in line with what we're, as the Department of Public Works, Parks and Rec, in line with what we were thinking as well. So again, we'll talk with our experts and go from there. Beyond security, I think the next is going to be location. And Ashley, do you want to talk about location?
So we've got some locations for you to consider today, and these come, if you want to pull up the map, it might be easier to talk about these. So these are some of the general locations that we kind of narrowed down while we were having the January 2022 Zoom meetings. So the community engagement, you can see where the blue squares are, and the two blue squares on number 6 and number 3. And over by number 2 is where there's existing facilities, and up by number 1. So the blue squares represent the blue porta potties. So those are where we're existing services that we want to definitely replace. And then the red circle dots from 1 to 8 are a conversation of locations that came up during our community discussions. So that was during the January meetings as well as during the focus group meetings. So those are the ones that we'd like you to consider today. Ideally, with the master plan, we would like to have 3 recommendations, going to have 3 permanent restroom facilities at the end, eventually. We've got the one existing over by number 2. And then right now, this conversation is really trying to look at serving the central and eastern location. That's the prioritization from town council. And then ultimately, we'd also like to recommend having a 3rd restroom that serves the playground area. So again, ultimately 3, replacing the permanent at number 2, adding a new one both to serve the central and eastern side, and then one that would serve the playground. So if you could help us with a dot exercise related to what your number 1 and number 2 selections are. We're using pink dots now, and RJ's going to jump in.
Yeah, before we get quite to that decision process, so some of these numbers are a little small. We can zoom in here in just a second, but we do want everyone to kind of understand a little bit about the costs, because some of the locations do have some heightened costs due to utility challenges or site improvements. So, see side by side, but in general, you can see many of them are the same lost the numbers. Number
3.
Yeah, number 6. This is the one that is at the existing maintenance yard.
It's number 5.
Is it number 5?
I cannot see that well enough.
It's not on there.
Oh, okay, it's over there.
So number 5, there's an added cost because we need a facility to stage our maintenance. So if we take over that space, we then have to create another maintenance space somewhere else.
Would you say that again?
Yeah.
RJ, why is 5 more costly?
So a couple factors. So the 2 main ones, well, one of the big ones is, so all this has a connection to our sewer system.
Right.
And so we know we have connection points, right out here in between the community center and Cafe Verde. We know we have a connection to Park Madera, and we know we have a connection on Pixley. But once you get more than 100, 150 feet away, we can't run gravity pipelines to that sewer. We have to pump them, and so that's an injector system that adds $100,000. So really, 6, 8, and possibly 1, 2, 6, 8, and 7 potentially can run gravity. 3, 5, and 4 just on that one item alone add about $100,000.
Oh, wow.
And a point there, so keep in mind that we're on a flat surface here, very close to the water table, and that's connecting to the existing. We don't have the option to use elevation and gravity to bring it there, so we would actually need to pump some of these, and that's what
So
Parker's getting
3,
at.
5, and 4 would add?
3, 5, and 4 just on that one item alone add about $100,000.
Wow.
What about 7? That's like
7, we think it can connect to the Park Madera sewer. Separately, just every additional foot costs a little more. So as you know, we're running 3 separate pipelines: water, electric, sewer to the facility. They have to be separate. You can't combine them, unfortunately, per code.
Is there any one spot that money-wise you prefer?
We're gonna leave our
I know.
opinions off of it.
Okay, the money-wise would be less money.
On the
Yeah,
other
we can
hand,
show you that.
$100,000 isn't very much in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of things.
Sure.
And also to consider is that some of the feedback that we received through the master plan is the sensitivity of retaining as much green space as we can. And also, we're holding on to the existing blue portables to save money so that we can put that money into the permanent facility rather than upgraded temporary facilities. We also, the priority during our discussions in January were to try to do whatever we could to locate next to existing facilities so that we're not trying to expend as much money on the connections, but putting it back into the amenities themselves. So just something to consider from background discussions.
So some other costs that we think would probably go package with these are, so number 8, for instance, is the one out front of cafeteria. You know, if we had a facility there, we need to provide, you know, good access and walking paths. So we might be looking at a new crosswalk with ADA compliant ramps across to the community center. We might be looking at a sidewalk along the east side of the current parking lot. So those are added costs that would go with it. Same thing with number 5, some additional sidewalk that would connect on the east side. Again, 3 and 4, slightly further from the sewer connections, so more utility runs.
And we don't really know what's going to be going on at Park Madera, right?
Right.
So that's kind of,
Yeah, I mean, in theory, you could still build something later and just have to maybe modify that sewer connection or that utility connection. But it wouldn't, I don't think, get in the way of building whatever the community desires at that time. Thank you.
RJ, do you
Yeah.
have an accessible vacuum set here? Is it accessible here, or does it need to be upgraded as well? Could 6 service this building and the park and serve 2 purposes?
I have to look. I'm willing to bet there's deficiencies in this one, so they would need to be.
Just curious if that's a project coming up in the future that we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone with doing number 6 as the 3rd. But if there's nothing on the plans for that.
Right, nothing planned yet.
Nothing planned. I think if that is the case, it's likely 5 or more years out, as opposed to we're trying to do something the next year, ideally. Hopefully, I mean, we'd love to have something in by 4th of July if we can, but it kind of depends on getting everyone supportive and all those things.
Where exactly is 7? It's sitting on the path.
7 is, I think there's some, it might be on the north side of the path, I think.
Like in picnic area G?
That's just beyond that area. So it's probably just like almost across the end of the dog park on this picture.
On the dog park side?
Probably on the other side because I think the dog park fence probably goes to just about where that 7 is.
How does Mohawk feel about that?
Well, everybody's invited to these meetings and we hope that they provide feedback on public comment. But right now we're trying to address a lot of the concerns that we're receiving in Town Park to alleviate some of the misuse of lack of facilities on that side. So we're hoping that we have feedback on all sides. You know, right now the central and eastern sides of the park, it's not accessible to a restroom. Even if our public lobbies are open and there's, you know, unfortunately just one restroom that's available at Cafe Verde and then we have portables. Based on the volume of use that we get on weekends with our soccer programs and people coming for park rentals and parties, really want to do our best to meet everybody's needs, recognizing that we're not going to find a location that's going to be ideal to everyone, but we hope that when you consider the DOT exercise of picking your top 2 priorities, priority locations, that you consider some of the pros and cons and what areas would serve which activities that people are coming to utilize the park. Acknowledging that there's costs associated with each location, but really considering how you as users or other users that you know would want to use the park and where they would want accessible restrooms. Johnny?
I think it's important to consider that some of the things that you've discussed that were going to be cost additions have already been identified as things that need to happen, whether or not there's a bathroom. For example, it's long been thought that there needs to be a sidewalk along the whole eastern side of the parking lot so that people aren't walking out in the traffic lane to get from the street to the park. And so when you're looking at add-ons or things that might be called excessive, you need to consider what has to be done regardless of whether there are restrooms out.
I agree.
I think there's a good point with that, you know, the additional add-ons as far as sewage ejectors. A lot of that's eliminated if you actually grade the field so that it's not useless for huge chunks of the time, based off of redoing the drainage so that it's a year-round field as well. So it's something to think about is if a lot of, facility maintenance and all those kind of things work together, you might actually get a lot of these thoughts to lose that $100,000 sewage ejector if you actually redo the drainage and actually lift the field elevation to drain properly and not become saturated during rains when we actually get rain.
I want to make sure that your feedback is able to capture for the group that's not here. You're soft-spoken. So let me make sure that I'm summarizing it correctly or partially correctly. Is that you're looking at coupling any kind of restroom facility with more infrastructure for facilities, as far as you mentioned, lifting the field and grading it, and so that there's more ability to put in the infrastructure for restrooms that are further into the park?
Yeah, there's a percentage of the field that ever since, I grew up in this area, and it's a huge percentage of the field during a winter storm makes the field useless because it just doesn't drain.
Because the water table's so high,
Exactly.
the water's coming up from the bottom.
And we're
down
using
from the
gravity
top.
to drain these, basically just
So
water off the
I'm
field.
kind of taking it as a question, can regrading be used as a technique to minimize some of these? And I think we just got to remember that sewer infrastructure has to go straight into the sewer pipes and out to the treatment plant.
Yeah.
Storm drain is different. It can be drained through French drains, and it can eventually go into waterways. But this side is so flat, and typically we look for a 2% slope. So
Yeah.
you got to come up, for every 100 feet you go out, you got to come up 2 feet. So it'd be some pretty substantial raising, and would likely drive costs up even higher.
But thank you for adding that perspective.
But there will be potential, I think, if we're so close to raise the foundation a foot or two. I think you're right, we would absolutely look at that. But less on the scale of raising the whole town park 5 feet to get
Well,
the
it drops 4 feet. So you're talking about if you regrade it to actually become, if you flatten out some of the fields, you're actually gaining 4 feet. So, there's a reason why the gym's foundation is 4 feet above ground, right? Because that's the new code, building code. So when you start thinking about these things that are coming down the line, and if you're going to phase the project 5, 10, 15 years down the line, maybe it makes sense to review 2, because that's there, right? But not to put in a sewage ejector pit that actually gives you yearly maintenance costs. I've got 15 years in plumbing, mechanical, contracting. I can tell you all about this.
Yeah.
So.
Sounds like you and I need to talk, so
Yeah.
we'll break off. So in the meantime, we are going to get to this third exercise. This is one, if you guys know the park well already, you can just go straight to the boards. If you want to take a minute, peek around the corner, refresh yourself with kind of how far things are, go ahead and do that too, but we'll give a few minutes extra for this one.
Can I just clarify one thing? So the existing bathroom, the permanent bathroom is staying. That's not leaving.
For right now.
Okay, so
Ultimately, in the master plan, we'll be putting recommendations to have 3 permanent facilities. This is the first priority because it's council directed. It's also one of the top priorities for improvement from the survey. So in my perspective of prioritizing the 3 restorations is installing the new one that serves the central and eastern side of the park, and then deciding based on council and community feedback whether the direction would be to install a new restroom that serves the playground or replace the existing one that's next to the tennis courts.
Okay, but the existing one works.
Yes, it works.
Okay.
And we do have a number 2 listed, so if you are passionate about, if we only have funding for 1 restroom and you'd rather just replace that one, that's your opinion, you can go ahead and use
Well,
your
I
stick
was
with
trying
that
to
one.
gauge because there's already one on the west side, and my concern is like the east side doesn't have anything. We have children running across the playground to go to the bathroom, or I found water bottles filled with urine on the east side. So whoever uses the east side aren't actually using bathrooms, they're using the fields, which is disgusting. And we have so many kids that are using the space. So I like the idea of an east side, which I know this is what we're like voting on. But my other thing is that there's no bathroom by the playground. And so childcare children have to leave the playground to come to another space that's away from eyesight maybe. So there's like, you have to travel to the bathroom with little kids. So I'm just trying to gauge, like, as I'm voting, what would be like most appropriate, because I do think the playground bathroom is important, east side bathroom is important. I just wanted to make sure there's another west bathroom. That's all. I'm just trying to.
Yes, and for this one we have 2 pink dots, so there's no priority, just you have 2 options to put your priorities on.
And until we have the whole thing built out in a permanent fashion, the likelihood reality is we're gonna have to rely on porta potties.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
RJ, just one quick question. Has staff looked at yet the possibility of reopening the entryway to the park from the back of Park Madera Center? That was fenced off when the town bought the property. And if it were open, the bathroom back in there would make a lot more sense because it would be circulating. You could circulate through the whole park from the back side or the front side to get to it. So I want to vote for that, but only if there's going to be an opening to it from Park
Write a
Madera
comment
Center.
on there.
Okay.
That's helpful to capture.
Okay, will do.
Yeah, a little bit of time was given on that during the dog park conversation, but we need to dive into that further if that's a strong push.
Great.
So 2 dot options, please.
All right, so
You get 2, right?
bring it together real quick and kind of wrap things up here, but then feel free to mill around after we say our last couple words.
Visibility,
I believe it's-
the best police we can have.
So we just want to give an opportunity for any last minute questions for the group. We're also going to hang out and answer any questions off to the side for anyone who wants to stick around. But on the screen, opportunities to.
Yeah, so on the screen, kind of, we're at the preliminary first workshop. From here, we're going to go and the Parks and Rec Commission will have an open public opportunity for more comment. So keep an eye on the town's website. That'll be published there. And then following the Parks and Rec will be, I have to look at my cheat sheet here, the Planning Commission. So again, another public opportunity. And then finally, it'll go for council approval. And then I'll get to kind of get my hands dirty and start working on bathrooms.
Well, we really need them, so we appreciate it. And,
Yeah.
you know, being the architect of a good-looking bathroom, nothing wrong with that.
Are there any comments or questions or things that anybody would like to say while we've got the recordings going, so for the benefit of anybody that's not here in person? I think we had one comment about some security concept of, you know, when you're considering the location of it, visibility also is a deterrent for any kind of vandalization. So that's something to also consider.
And safety.
And safety. Okay.
And we will take the comment. Yeah, everyone's comment counts, and we will, you know, especially as we bring a designer on board, but the more we have to look through, the better.
So again, next steps, we encourage any participation from anybody in the community that's not here. Also for everyone that is here, if you have any lasting comments or, you know, thoughts that after the fact or talking to other people in the community, please send them to us. We are going to have an internal planning meeting just to kind of review some of the initial feedback next week, and then in future we'll be going to the Parks and Rec Commission. So if you sign up for alerts on the project page, you'll be notified of any public meetings and opportunities to provide additional comment in addition to emails. And again, so commission, then planning, like we would go to for any town project, and then the commission and both commissions would be making the final recommendation for consideration and funding from town council. So at least 3 more opportunities publicly to make comments and hear other feedbacks, but you're welcome to send any information to us as well.
And if you want to leave your email, we can also add you to an email list and try and get you some notifications that way as well.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you.